The air crackled with forced cheer. Sarah smiled across the table at David, her husband of 10 years. Candlelight flickered, catching the gleam of her wedding ring, a ring that felt heavy, suffocating. The restaurant buzzed around them, oblivious to the simmering tension. David raised his glass, his eyes full of love. Love for a woman who no longer deserved it. Sarah's smile tightened, a shard of ice in her chest. She thought she could keep them separate, her two lives, the perfect wife, the devoted mother, and then, him, Mark. A stolen glance at a work conference, a shared laugh, a forbidden spark. Their affair was a whirlwind of clandestine meetings and whispered promises. But tonight, guilt gnawed at her. Tonight the charade felt impossible to maintain. David reached for her hand, his touch sending a jolt through her. "You okay, love? You seem distant tonight." Sarah withdrew her hand, feigning a light laugh. "It's just been a long week. Work's been crazy. Lies. All lies." Her phone vibrated in her purse, a text from Mark. "Thinking of you." Heat crept up her neck. She excused herself to the restroom, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. In the cool, sterile environment she finally allowed herself to breathe. Staring at her reflection, she saw the cracks in her carefully constructed facade. The guilt, the fear, the thrill of the forbidden. Back at the table, David was recounting a story, his voice a comforting rumble. Sarah tuned him out, her mind replaying stolen moments with Mark. His touch, his laugh, the way he made her feel alive, a dangerous longing coiled in her stomach. She caught David watching her, a flicker of concern in his eyes. "What is it, Sarah? Something's bothering you." She offered a tight smile. "It's nothing, darling, just a headache. More lies." The weight of them threatened to crush her. She just had to get through the night. The drive home was tense, punctuated by David's attempts at conversation and Sarah's clipped responses. Pulling into the driveway, Sarah noticed a car parked across the street. Unfamiliar. A shiver ran down her spine. David, oblivious, was already halfway up the walkway. As they entered the house, Sarah's phone buzzed with a message. "Mark, see you tomorrow?" She quickly deleted the message, her heart pounding. Someone was watching. She could feel it. But who? And what had they seen? Section 5. Confrontation at the cafe. The next day, Sarah met Mark at their usual cafe, a knot of anxiety tightening in her stomach. He greeted her with a kiss, his eyes searching hers. "You seem on edge." She forced a smile. "Just a lot going on." Before Mark could reply, a figure materialized at their table, a woman, tall, elegant, with eyes like steel. She looked at Sarah with a mixture of pity and contempt. "You should know," the woman said, her voice cold as ice, "that happiness built on lies never lasts." And with that, she turned and walked away, leaving Sarah reeling in her wake. Panic choked Sarah. Who was that woman? What did she know? Mark seemed equally stunned. Who was that? Sarah shook her head, her mind racing. She had to get out of there. She mumbled an excuse and fled, leaving Mark standing on the sidewalk. Driving home, Sarah felt a growing sense of dread. The woman's words echoed in her mind. Happiness built on lies never lasts. Was it a warning? A threat? And what about the car parked across the street from her house? The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fall into place, revealing a truth more sinister than she could have imagined. Back home, Sarah found David waiting for her. His face was pale, his eyes filled with a pain that tore at her heart. "We need to talk." He held up a small gold earring, an earring Sarah knew all too well. It belonged to the woman from the cafe, the woman who had been in David's car last night. The truth slammed into Sarah, knocking the breath from her lungs. David had been cheating too. All this time, while she was consumed by her own guilt and deceit, he had been living a lie of his own. The irony was a bitter pill to swallow. The next few hours were a blur of anger, accusations, and agonizing pain. The life they had built together, the love they thought they shared, it all lay shattered around them like broken glass. Sarah confessed everything, the affair, the lies, the crushing guilt. To her surprise, David listened quietly, his expression unreadable. When she was finished, he simply nodded. "I knew," he said, his voice hollow. "I've known about Mark for months." The taste of betrayal, bitter and cold, filled Sarah's mouth. In the end, there were no easy answers, no clear resolutions. The truth, when it finally came out, was a tangled mess of hurt and betrayal. As Sarah looked at David across the wreckage of their marriage, she saw a stranger reflected in his eyes, and in his pain, she saw a twisted reflection of her own. They were both guilty, both victims. Their love, once a source of strength and comfort, had become a weapon, wielded with careless abandon. As Sarah walked away from the only life she had ever known, she realized that sometimes the greatest betrayals come from the ones we love the most, and sometimes the most painful truths are the ones we hide from ourselves.